Yeah, you tuned into the right place. Welcome to the rain. Golden Cuey, H 2.0. Yeah. You're looking for a diamond, found a treasure in the rough. Tired of all the noise, cause you finally had enough. I'm here to build a movement on a mission for the nation. Dropping gems of knowledge, killing all the hesitation. We fighting for the truth, yeah, we fighting for what's right. Building unity and shining up a brand new light. It's a variety channel, but the vision's crystal clear. Pushing us all forward, conquering the doubt and fear. Welcome to the Queendom, it's 2.0 on your screen, where the content's real and smart and funny in between. This is more than just a stream, it's a platform for the change. Time to elevate the game and rearrange. If you're ready for a vibe that you can feel and trust, joining in the movement is a definite must. This ain't just another channel talking smack behind the screen. It's a spotlight for the creators, building up a better scene. Spreading radical love, that's the message in the code. Helping everybody carry up a heavy load. From social justice issues to the laughter that we need. Planting seeds of progress, watch them grow from just a seed. This is authentic, this is raw, this is everything you saw. Welcome to the battle that is truly being fought. Ooh, so come with your respect and see the real effect. Cause I protect my own right here on the throne. Don't make me envy. Unleash the dragon. You subscribe, ring that notification bell. Yeah, you don't wanna miss a thing. Welcome to the family. Yeah. Yeah, you tuned into the right place. Welcome to the rain. Golden Cuey, H 2.0. Yeah. You're looking for a diamond, found a treasure in the rough. Tired of all the noise, cause you finally had enough. I'm here to build a movement on a mission for the nation. Dropping gems of knowledge, killing all the hesitation. We fighting for the truth, yeah, we fighting for what's right. Building unity and shining up a brand new light. It's a variety channel, but the vision's crystal clear. Pushing us all forward, conquering the doubt and fear. Welcome to the Queendom, it's 2.0 on your screen, where the content's real and smart and funny in between. This is more than just a stream, it's a platform for the change. Time to elevate the game and rearrange. If you're ready for a vibe that you can feel and trust, joining in the movement is a definite must. This ain't just another channel talking smack behind the screen. It's a spotlight for the creators, building up a better scene. Spreading radical love, that's the message in the code. Helping everybody carry up a heavy load. From social justice issues to the laughter that we need. Planting seeds of progress, watch them grow from just a seed. This is authentic, this is raw, this is everything you saw. Welcome to the battle that is truly being fought. Ooh, so come with your respect and see the real effect. Cause I protect my own right here on the throne. Don't make me envy. Unleash the dragon. You subscribe, ring that notification bell. Yeah, you don't wanna miss a thing. Welcome to the family. Yeah. ink is bleeding on the bill, it's looking faded and frayed. The fourth estate is corporate owned and heavily paid. They're trading in the facts for a narrative fabricated. If you leak the truth, you get deleted and degraded. Look, the teleprompter's glowing with a scripted out deception, a digital infection to manipulate perception. They steer the conversation in a singular direction, while the First Amendment's dying with no hope of resurrection. It's a manufactured crisis, yeah, they're selling us the fear, whispering the lies until it's all the people here. They call it fact-checking just to keep the vision blurry, while they bury every whistleblower in a frantic hurry. They want silence in the streets, silence in the booth, a total moratorium on anyone with truth. They're tearing out the pages, yeah, they're burning down the fence. A war against the people and against our common sense. It's the sound of the silent, it's heavy and it's cold. It's the sound of the silent, it's heavy and it's cold. Independent outlets, yeah, they're catching all the heat. The ones who skip the press release and actually hit the beat. But the algorithms weaponize, the reach is getting throttled. The spirit of the journalist is suffocated bottle. They shadow ban the brave and they platform the fake. It's a psychological game with the highest of stakes. If you don't toe the line, then they label you a threat, putting filters on your mouth like a suffocating net. They claim they're stopping harm, but they're only stopping thought. Democracy is auctioned and the airwaves have been bought. The gatekeepers are frantic, they're losing their control, so they're trying to put a padlock on the collective soul. They're cutting the wires, they're pulling the plugs, treating the seekers of truth like the thugs. From the boardrooms to the courtrooms, the pressure is rising. The depth of the discourse of what they're devising. The spark in the dark is a beautiful thing. Let the bells of the rebels and dissidents ring. Of peace if the cost is your tongue. The songs of the ancestors are waiting to be sung. They want us quiet, compliant, and staring at the floor while they're locking up the exits and they're bolting every door. But the truth is a frequency they can't fully jam. I'm a man with a mind, I'm not a ghost in their program. No more silence. The loudest thing in the world is the truth they try to hide. Keep the mic on, keep the eyes open. It's the sound of love.
Hey y'all, what's up? It's your girl Golden. I'm back with another live, y'all. We got some things to get into this morning. I hope everybody's having a good morning. It's about 11:12 a.m. here Eastern time in the Carolinas in the United States. It's a pretty decent day outside. The sun is shining. It's cold, but it is what it is. Yeah, we got to get into this, y'all. So I'm pretty sure by now you have heard and you have seen that they have taken our boy Don Lemon into custody for reporting at the protest. So I'm going to get into all of that, y'all. We have some news reports. We also have some of his constituents that are over on his channel right now that are speaking about this. And we're going to talk about this, but also get into some civics as well. So we'll be talking about what they have basically tried to detain him under, which is the FACE Act of 1994. We discussed this briefly on a previous live, but we'll go over it a little bit more. But anyway, let me go ahead and break down these details for y'all. So the federal government has just bypassed a magistrate judge ruling to arrest journalist Don Lemon in Los Angeles while he was covering the Grammys. The arrest, along with the detention of independent journalist Georgia Fort, stems from their coverage of a January 18th protest at City's Church in St. Paul, a church where a high-ranking ICE official serves as pastor. The Department of Justice is attempting to use the FACE Act of 1994 to claim that documenting a protest inside a church is a federal crime. We're going to expose the history of the FACE Act and go over that. and some of the tactics that Pam Bondi is now using, and how the people of Minneapolis are still standing firm. We have to remember in times like this that knowledge is our best armor, okay? So we're going to be educating ourselves as we go along. Now, passed in 1994 under President Clinton was the Freedom of Access to Clinic Interests Act, which is the FACE Act of 1994. It was a response to the unaliving of Dr. David Gunn and the Spring of Life blockades. It was designed to stop violent extremists from physically shutting down health clinics, but they also have church provisions under this act. Most people don't know that the FACE Act also protects places of religious worship. It was added to ensure that the laws were viewpoint neutral. Historically, this law has almost never been used against journalists. By charging Don Lemon and Georgia Fort, the DOJ is claiming that a reporter's presence with a camera constitutes physical obstruction of a religious service. Let's do some fact checking. So, like we said, on January 22nd, Magistrate Judge Douglas Micko, a former public defender, rejected the government's initial bid to charge Don Lemon, stating his work was protected journalism. The grand jury bypass. After the judge said no, Attorney General Pam Bondi reportedly impaneled a grand jury yesterday, January 29th, to get an indictment behind closed doors, bypassing the judge's skepticism. Lemon is reportedly facing conspiracy to deprive civil rights and FACE Act violations. This is an attempt to label a journalist or journalism as a coordinated attack. Don Lemon's lawyer, Abe Lowell, has explicitly stated that this arrest is a transparent attempt to distract from the fact that the DOJ is not investigating the federal agents who unalived Renee Good and Alex Preddy. Minneapolis is not standing down. Despite federal sweeps and the use of pepper balls, the community understands that the First Amendment does not require a press pass. Whether you are a veteran like Lemon or an independent creator, you have the right to document the government. So let's go ahead and get into a few things, y'all. First, I want, as you can see up on the screen, I want to read the official statement that has been posted on Don Lemon's X or, Twitter space. And this is a statement from his lawyer, Abe Lowell, attorney for Don Lemon. They state that Don Lemon was taken into custody by federal agents last night in Los Angeles, where he was covering the Grammy Awards. Don has been a journalist for 30 years, and his constitutionally protected work in Minneapolis was no different than what he has always done. The First Amendment exists to protect journalists whose role is to shine light on the truth and hold those in power accountable. There is no more important time for people like Don to be doing this work. Instead of investigating the federal agents who unalived two peaceful Minnesota protesters, the Trump Justice Department is devoting its time, attention, and resources to this arrest. And that is the real indictment of wrongdoing in this case. The unprecedented attack on the First Amendment and transparent attempt to distract attention from the many crises facing the administration will not stand. Don will fight these charges vigorously and thoroughly in court. So yes, that is the official statement from Don's legal representative, his lawyer, okay? Now we're going to go ahead and get into some of the news reportings about what's going on. If y'all have not seen, which I'm pretty sure you may have already seen them by now, it was out early this morning. I know a lot of people are covering this. But I just want to play a little bit of this for you guys so we can hear all of the details as to what is going on. This is ridiculous, if you ask me. And we're getting pretty tired of seeing these type of things happen. Um, because it is a clear attack on freedom of speech. We know that this administration wants to hide the terrible things that they've been doing. And so now they want to come after journalists and try and lock them up and put them in jail for reporting on the truth and bringing that truth to the people. Let me go ahead and get this video up on the stage for y'all. Give me just a sec, and we're going to get into it. All right.
Former CNN anchor Don Lemon has been taken into custody, arrested just days after a protest inside a Minneapolis church. Now, he has maintained that he was going in as a journalist to cover the protest. Let's get right to CNN's Kara Scannell, and CNN chief media analyst Brian Stelter is also here with us. Kara, what are you learning first about this arrest that we should note? A magistrate judge, had rejected the federal government's attempt to put him under arrest just 1 week or so ago.
Sarah, that's right. We had reported that earlier this week that the magistrate judge had rejected an attempt by DOJ to bring criminal charges against Don Lemon. What we have learned is that last night in Los Angeles, in the 11 o'clock hour, Don Lemon was arrested in the hotel lobby in Beverly Hills and taken into custody. Now, it is not clear at this time what he is charged with, or if he is charged in a criminal complaint, or if he is charged in an indictment, which would have been returned by a grand jury. But it does appear to be connected to that because as we reported earlier this week, the Attorney General Pam Bondi was livid that Lemon was not charged at the time. It appeared that they were going to continue to try to bring charges against him. And now we know that Lemon was arrested last night in Los Angeles, where he was in town to cover the Grammys. I do have a statement from his attorney, Abby Lowell, and it says in part, Don has been a journalist for 30 years, and his constitutionally protected work in Minneapolis was no different than what he has always done. The First Amendment exists to protect journalists whose role it is to shine light on the truth and hold those in power accountable. There is no more important time for people like Don to be doing this work. Instead of investigating the federal agents who killed 2 peaceful Minnesota protesters, the Trump Justice Department is devoting its time, attention, and resources to this arrest. And that is the real indictment of wrongdoing in this case. Now, we do expect Lemon to make an appearance in court today. That is usually the process that follows when someone is arrested. And then it will be up to the judge whether he gives him bail, which would be expected in this case. So we're likely to learn more details about exactly what he is charged with, what form he is charged in, and if this was returned by a grand jury. And then we'll see potentially Lemon later today, but he's being held and has been held overnight in Los Angeles arrested on some charges that appear to be related to Minneapolis. Sarah?
Kara, thank you for your reporting, giving us what we know at this hour. Brian, it cannot be overstated. This is a stunning move by the Department of Justice, going after a journalist, arresting Don Lemon. What do you see has happened here? Because a magistrate judge just last week told them, no, you are not going to lump him in with those who were protesting. He was there as a journalist. What could have changed, A, and B, how do you see this by the administration, what they have just done?
Right. This is a First Amendment test with multiple dimensions. The First Amendment protects the work of journalists. It also protects the right of worshipers to go to church and be able to peacefully assemble and worship and practice their faith. And the argument that we have heard from Trump officials is that that right to worship was infringed, not just by the protesters who walked into that church and started chanting, but also by Don Lemon, because he and his crew members were there. Lemon has said all along that he was there not as an activist, but as a journalist. In fact, he was saying those words and repeating that out loud when he was inside the church. But he clearly knew something was taking place that day with the protesters. He told his viewers on YouTube to stay tuned because there was something about to happen. He was careful not to have his camera crew walk into the church until there was a disruption. And I would urge people to go online, actually watch the YouTube video, see how it all went down. I think Lemon's reporting from inside the church was very valuable. As a viewer, I learned a lot about how it happened, how it all went down. He interviewed some of the protesters in real time, yes. He also interviewed some of the worshipers. And I thought their comments were really insightful about what they went through, about how troubled, how scared they were by the disruption. At the same time, like I said, you learned a lot from the protesters about why they decided to show up there, believing that one of the pastors at the church also worked for ICE. So this video on YouTube, this is the real focal point. This video, it of course happened on a Sunday morning. This video was then streaming for everyone to see. And by Monday, the day after that incident, there was a lot of online outrage on the right. Many calls from MAGA loyalists to have Lemon arrested. I think an important part of the story here is the amount of pressure the Justice Department, Pam Bondi, and others have been under from the right to arrest Lemon, to take action like this. And as you said, an initial attempt to do so failed in Minnesota. Now we're seeing another attempt to do so. And Lemon did say on his live stream last week, he expected the government would keep coming for him. I think I view this in context with Trump administration attempts to target other perceived critics. Think about Letitia James. Think about James Comey. Think about the many cases of Trump retribution. Don Lemon is another figure on that list. President Trump has repeatedly attacked Lemon, both when Lemon was an anchor here at CNN, but again, more recently. Trump has made no secret of his disdain for Lemon. And Lemon, of course, has been harshly critical of President Trump for many years as well. So he is a Trump foe. And this is another example of the administration targeting a Trump foe. A friend of Lemon's tells me, as Kara just said, he did spend the night in jail. He's still in custody. His friends don't seem to know what the charges are yet. But the pressure from the right to take this action was really, really severe. And you're going to see some people, on the MAGA right who are going to cheer this. At the same time, many First Amendment groups, many press freedom advocates are going to say this has a real chill. Because Lemon walked in, yes, with a microphone and a camera to document what happened at the church. Yeah. And frankly, I think viewers are better off for him having told us what happened in the church that day.
He also spoke to the pastor that day, and we should be clear, committing journalism is not a crime.
Yes.
It is not a crime in this country. It is a crime in other countries, but not here. So if all they have is that he went into the church and started interviewing people after the protest entered the church, it will be very interesting to see how they explain that when it comes to the First Amendment, which the president has consistently complained that other people's, and the right has consistently complained that their First Amendment is being crushed, whether it be online or otherwise, by past administrations. It is very, very fascinating to see this happen, but also terrifying to a lot of journalists who are watching this and seeing what happens, especially after this administration also went into a Washington Post reporter's home to take out all of her evidence. She was not the focus of the investigation, but she was someone who was contacting someone who had been giving out information, leaking information. And it's just stunning to see what is happening here with this administration. Now, we do not know at this point in time what the charges are, Brian, but you mentioned the word chilling. And I want to get back to that. Do you see this as another step by the administration to scare reporters like yourself, like myself, like others, into being super careful or maybe not even being as critical of the administration?
Number one, journalists will not be deterred. We have seen that time and time again in this country, more than a year now since President Trump returned to office, and the reporting continues no matter what. At the Washington Post, that example recently, that FBI raid has been met by legal action by the Post, fighting in court to get that reporter's phones, her phone and her computers back. With Don Lemon, what did he do as soon as there were threats about him? He hired one of the best attorneys in the country when it comes to these kinds of cases. Abe Lowell, who put out the statement this morning, he has been a go-to lawyer. He's a DC mega lawyer. He has been for decades, but he's been a go-to lawyer for people who are perceived to be targets of President Trump. So Lemon has called in reinforcement, so to speak, believing this could and would happen. It is notable that Lemon is an independent journalist, meaning he no longer works for a big media outlet. When he left CNN, he launched a YouTube channel, a Substack, a variety of different platforms on social media to produce videos, some of which are very entertaining, some of which are opinionated, and some are straightforward journalism. And he now has a very big footprint across Instagram, YouTube, and other platforms. So he's an independent journalist, which means he doesn't necessarily have a team of lawyers and others with him at a newsroom to support him in a moment like this. But as I said, he did hire one of the best attorneys on this topic to defend him, expecting that this could happen. This idea of a chilling effect, yes, it is real. There's been a chill in the air for the past 12 months or so when it comes to reporting in the U.S., and yet the work is still being done. And by the way, Lemon was not the only person with a camera inside that church. I'm waiting to see if anybody else who was trying to film inside that church that day may also be targeted. We now wait to see what exactly the charges are, Sarah.
Breaking news now, just into our CNN newsroom, we are learning journalist, former colleague of ours, former CNN anchor, Don Lemon, has been taken.
Okay, y'all. So that was the first news report coming from CNN, which we know, Don used to work there. And so we've heard exactly what has been happening, but I wanted to break down a little bit more of information under these acts. We're hearing about these acts that they're using as loopholes to silence people, to reverse the rights and the amendments of, American citizens, reporters, protesters. So let's get into it. I want to read a few things for y'all real quick. So we're going to get into a video, but I also just want to give you just a few pointers real quick about the FACE Act, okay? So it's the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances. It was created, like we said, in 1994. While it is often associated with reproductive health, this law actually covers 3 specific areas. It makes it a federal crime to use force, threats, or physical obstruction to, number 1, reproductive health. So interfering with anyone getting or providing reproductive health services. Number 2, places of worship, interfering with anyone exercising their right to religious freedom at a place of worship. Or number 3, property damage, intentionally damaging or destroying a facility because it provides either reproductive services or is a place of worship. Now, here are some of the penalties when it comes to, breaking this law. If it is nonviolent obstruction, there can be up to 6 months in prison. It's usually the first offense. If there is bodily injury, that can be up to 10 years in prison. And if unaliving results, that can be up to a lifetime in prison. I also want to talk to y'all about another act. This act is called the James Byrd Jr. Hate Crime Act. Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act of 2009. This act significantly expanded the 1968 Federal Hate Crime Act. Its most critical updates include protected classes. They added in gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, and disability to the list of protected groups, which already include race, color, religion, and national origin. Here's some of the removed barriers. Previously, the government had to prove the victim was participating in a federally protected activity like voting. This act removed that requirement and now applies to any violent act motivated by bias. The federal authority, it allows the Department of Justice, the DOJ, to step in if local authorities are unable or unwilling to prosecute a hate crime. But y'all, and I have to add this insert, if the DOJ is the ones that are sending people out to perform, I think, what they would call detaining immigrants, but it's ending with people being abused and unalived. My question is, wouldn't this apply to them? It's all kind of backwards to me, if you ask me, because it's the local authorities in the states that are trying to protect the people. from undergoing these type of abuses and unalivings. But from what we know, because we watch very closely, y'all, it's the DOJ that has put organizations and groups in place that are committing these abuses and unalivings to people. So that one I wanted to bring up for y'all because I wanted y'all to think about that. Because if we're going to be, digging deep here into the law and pulling anything out of the back of our pockets or whatnot, then let's just be lawful. If we're going to be lawful, let's be lawful. So there's acts and there are laws in place that can combat a lot of these things. And honestly, I think some laws and some of these acts need to be geared and directed towards, y'all know who? ICE. These organizations that this administration's DOJ has put out on the streets that is abusing, hurting, harming, and unaliving people. Now, let's get into it. How this can apply to ICE in the current unalivings. Applying these acts to federal agents, ICE or CBP, is complex. We understand that because they often claim qualified immunity or argue that they are acting under federal authority. However, here is how the legal bridge is built. Bias-motivated violence under the Shepard-Byrd. If an ICE agent uses lethal force, it can be proven that the victim was targeted because of their national origin, race, or ethnicity, rather than a legitimate law enforcement necessity. The Shepard-Byrd Act can be used to prosecute the agent for a hate crime. Current context, with reports like the homicide of Gerardo Lunis Campos at Fort Bliss and the pow-powings of citizens like Renee Good and Alex Preddy this month, investigators look for evidence of bias. If agents are found to be using Operation Metro Surge as a cover for targeting specific ethnic groups with violence, this act is a primary tool for federal prosecution. Interference with Religious Freedom Act, the FACE Act. The FACE Act is often overlooked in immigration context, but it applies if ICE agents conduct raids or use force to interfere with people at places of worship. And we know, and we have seen the videos of ICE agents detaining people in their place of worship, interrupting their services, hemming them up, dragging them out, and throwing them in vans and driving them away. If ICE targets a church that is providing sanctuary or interferes with a religious service to make arrests, they could potentially be in violation of the FACE Act protections for religious freedom. Interesting how that seems more so to apply to the ICE officers than what it seems to apply to a Don Lemon or a reporter that is just capturing a story. We also have color of law violations. So, since we're talking about the FACE Act and the Shepard-Byrd Act, the most common way agents are prosecuted for unalivings is under the 18 USC 242, deprivation of rights under color of law. This makes it a crime for a government official to willingly deprive someone of their constitutional rights, like the Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable seizure and unaliving. So I want to just break down a couple of those things real quick, okay? Now, the Operation Metro Surge tactics and the 36 unalived reported in ICE custody since 2025 have led to increased calls for the DOJ to use these specific statutes to bypass local hurdles and hold federal agents directly accountable. But it's not really local hurdles that are in the way. It is the DOJ that just simply won't do what they're supposed to do. So, I just think that was important to bring all of that to attention, because when I'm looking at this stuff and we're reading the laws and we're understanding these acts and these laws that are in place, and we're seeing who stands on what side of them, it seems to be very upside down to me. And I don't know if you guys agree or not, but the irony for me that they would try to detain or arrest Don Lemon under the FACE Act when he did nothing wrong. But as we have read and we have learned about the FACE Act, it's actually the ICE officers that could and need, I think, to be charged and can be held under the FACE Act. So y'all let me know how y'all put it together. But that's what it's reading to me. But I want to go ahead and show y'all something else real quick. Just a few words from some other members of Don Lemon's show, some of his close friends. Right now, they're speaking out and they're keeping it all the way 100 as far as, what this really is about and how they feel, because it is very heartbreaking. But we know God is going to turn it all around and make it all right. I believe that. I hope y'all believe that as well. But we are clearly seeing the injustices. And I'm glad that people are speaking up and standing for what is right, because none of this is right at all. So let's get into this real quick, y'all. Give me a second to get this up on the screen for you. We'll hear just a few words. And again, while Don, is in this unfortunate circumstance, we have to still remember to support his channel. Go over there, watch his lives, his videos, subscribe, become a member, keep it rolling, okay? Because he'll be right back. Trust me, he will. All right, let's go ahead and get into this.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us, Lemon Nation. I'm Monique Presley. I am guest hosting this morning for our friend, our brother, our journalist, who we all have been able to count on for the past 3 decades, Don Lemon. You know, guys, that I'm here with you frequently and often, and one of the things that we always talk about is the importance of independent media. We talk about how much it's necessary for us to support those who are out doing the work every single day, and that support is needed more than ever today for independent journalists like Don, who I'm honored to guest host for this morning, and like Georgia Fort, who was also arrested last night. The information that we have so far, and we'll be sharing as much as we can with you throughout this hour, is that Don was arrested late last night in Los Angeles. He's there, as you all know, for the Grammys. He is scheduled to be live on the red carpet covering Grammy events. And he was arrested by federal agents in Los Angeles around midnight. And he has released the following statement through his attorney, Abby Lowell. Don Lemon was taken into custody by federal agents last night in Los Angeles, where he was covering the Grammy Awards. Don has been a journalist for 30 years, and his constitutionally protected work in Minneapolis was no different than what he has always done. The First Amendment exists to protect journalists whose role is to shine light on the truth and hold those in power accountable. There is no more important time for people like Don to be doing this work. Instead of investigating the federal agents who killed 2 peaceful Minnesota protesters, the Trump Justice Department is devoting its time, attention, and resources to this arrest. And that is the real indictment of wrongdoing in this case. This unprecedented attack on the First Amendment and transparent attempt to distract attention from the many crises facing this administration will not stand. Don will fight these charges vigorously and thoroughly in court. I see many of you saying free Don Lemon, and of course that's what we are demanding, that he be released immediately, and we want these charges dropped. I'm not here by myself this morning. There are so many experts who we've come to count on during the time that Don has been here on the Don Lemon Show, the Don Lemon channel on YouTube. And one of them is Charles Coleman, ESQ. He's my friend, my brother. He's a former prosecutor. He's a frequent commentator MSNBC, and elsewhere. Welcome, Charles. Good morning.
Good morning, Monique. Thanks for having me.
Well, Don's having us, Charles.
This is true. This is true.
And what an odd time for us to be in. We actually on this show a number of times in the past couple of weeks have had the conversation about this very thing. We've discussed what this started with in Minnesota, which was a group of protesters, not Don, who's a journalist, not Georgia, who's a journalist. A group of protesters staged a pop-up protest at a church in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Don was covering that event, covering the news story. And now we find that Don has been arrested and, according to the DHS, charged under 18 USC 241 and 248. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, Monique, one of the things that we may have been able to sort of read the tea leaves to determine that was confirmed today, apparently by the wife of Stephen Miller, is that Don Lemon and as well as the other journalist, Georgia, who was arrested after apparently these things went to a grand jury. They were presented in front of a grand jury. And the reason that that's significant is because the federal government ran out of options effectively when they went to a magistrate judge and they could not secure an arrest warrant. And then they appealed that, and they could not have that appeal granted. And so their attempts to go through a magistrate judge in order to secure an arrest warrant were both denied, which left them with very few options, which was to go in front of the grand jury. I had sort of thought about this as a former prosecutor because their options were limited. The thing about going in front of a grand jury that our audience needs to understand is, the old saying is very much so true, that you can indict a ham sandwich. It is not difficult to get an indictment when you have a presentation in front of the grand jury. Speaking as a former prosecutor, and one of the reasons why, for people who don't know that, is it's a secret proceeding. It is a proceeding that is effectively run by the prosecutor. There is no magistrate there. There is no judge there. There is no arbiter. It is basically the prosecutor presents whatever facts they choose to present. The defendant has a right in most cases to testify, but in most cases will not testify. The defense attorney cannot ask any questions or be present if their client is not testifying. And so no one actually knows what was said, who presented, what witnesses they presented, what evidence the grand jury saw. And so all of those things create a very comfortable environment for prosecutors to secure an indictment. I want to read two of the statutes that apparently came back on the indictment. One of them is U.S. Code 18 U.S. Code 241. If anyone's looking this up, Section 241 of 18 U.S. Code. It is referred to as a conspiracy against rights, which makes it a federal crime for two or more persons to conspire to injure, threaten, or to intimidate anyone in the United States in the free exercise or enjoyment of any constitutional or statutory right. Violations can result in fines up to 10 years in prison or up to life imprisonment or death if certain serious crimes result. The other statute that appears that Don was charged under is 18 USC Section 248, which is known as the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, or the FACE Act of 1994. This is a federal law that prohibits the use of force, threat of force, or physical obstruction to intentionally injure, intimidate, or interfere with anyone obtaining or providing reproductive health services or exercising First Amendment rights at a place of worship. So that last statute was intended to protect people who are seeking reproductive care or to exercise their right, what had previously been a right to abortion and abortion clinics primarily. And then the First Amendment piece around houses of worship had been added on. And the first piece was essentially about obstructing the ability for people to go and worship. Again, I want to stress to viewers that regardless of what the statutes say and regardless of what we may have seen in various videos, we do not know how the prosecutors in this case framed the facts in front of this particular grand jury that returned the indictment. What I will say in before we go further, Monique, is that I think, however, it is telling. MS Now reporter Carol Linning earlier today confirmed that there were career DOJ prosecutors in both Minnesota, where this took place, as well as in Los Angeles, where Don was arrested.
I think we have that. If somebody can put it up,
who refused to participate in the arrest and the indictment and the prosecution of this case because they felt like the evidence did not match the facts. And so that only affirms for me a previous notion that I've had, which is part of the punishment is the process. It is to sort of embarrass Don Lemon. It is to embarrass the journalists who are associated with Don Lemon in such a way that they are not willing to continue to go forward. And I think that that's a very significant thing. Georgia Ford as well, another journalist arrested as part of doing their job, exercising their right to freedom of the press. And so when you have career prosecutors who are saying that the evidence does not support the charges in two different cities, two different offices, that is extremely telling as to the strength of this case. But again, the strength of the case is not the conversation for the DOJ and for those who are pushing this. It is making the process and its difficulty the punishment for Don and for Georgia.
right? And what they will learn is that they're just going to strengthen the resolve, not just of somebody like Don or Georgia, who have been doing this for years and are a credit to their profession, but they're strengthening the resolve of the public, because everyone who's seeing this is reacting, understanding that this is wrong, and that if there was ever some line to be crossed, then we've crossed it. But there are no lines with this administration. I want to highlight a couple of things that you said, Charles. Obviously, we say in the law all the time, the grand jury can indict a ham sandwich. The reason why we say that is because as a career defense attorney, one of the things I always knew is the grand jury belongs to the prosecutor. So unless they can't, and really, if they're trying to say Mickey Mouse was there, if they've got a sliver of anything to show it, they're going to get their indictment. And the reason is because the standard is lower. So sometimes the public is looking at it and they're thinking, well, there must be evidence, because in a criminal case, you have to prove things beyond a reasonable doubt in order to get a conviction. And that is true for conviction, but that is not true to get an indictment. And so whoever they found, because these career DOJ prosecutors wouldn't do the job, and we've seen prosecutors quit their jobs in DC, we've seen them quit their jobs in Minnesota, U.S. Attorneys, career members of that office have left their jobs. And so it's like many other things in this administration, Charles, where they have to go down the line until they get somebody who doesn't have any scruples, who doesn't have any integrity. Sometimes they have to go out and hire folks off the street. And that's how they get somebody to actually get this work done. To your knowledge, what will the next steps be?
So at the point that the indictment is read in open court, there will be an initial plea entered by Don. I fully expect that it will be not guilty. And at that point, the judge will make a decision as to any bail if the DOJ asks for bail. I can't imagine that Don would be remanded. I can't imagine that bail would be exorbitantly high. Don is not at all. And for people who are not certain as to how bail is set, the notion of bail is to make sure that someone has an incentive to return to trial. And so Don Lemon is someone who clearly has every interest in fighting these charges, that he absolutely, I imagine, through his lawyers, will be eager to exonerate himself or have himself exonerated from these accusations. And he's like one of the most recognizable faces in journalism, if not media, across the country. He's not at all a flight risk. So I can't see bail being set here. And if it is, I certainly can't see it being high. That being said, after that, he will be released and there will be scheduling around the next phases of the case, discovery, pre-trial motions and things of that nature. I anticipate that there may be a case that is being built here, and we've talked about this before, Monique, for alleging malicious prosecution by the defense. It would not entirely surprise me to see that his attorneys consider filing a motion for malicious prosecution, and here's why. This is where the MAGA machine, the MAGA media machine, comes back to bite itself, because it is very uncharacteristic to have government officials, particularly at the leadership level, so openly and so brazenly talk about their intentions and how they intend to move forward with respect to investigations and prosecutions. And they've done that writ large with respect to Don Lemon around this. And so they have created their own very, very discoverable paper trail that's been out in the open, that they would literally have to stipulate to, that they, came from official accounts on social media. And so now you have given people the tools to build this case for malicious prosecution against Don.
Well, and not only that, Charles, but the chief judge wrote that letter that ended up being part of the public record. Correct. Where this DOJ was pressuring him. Like they couldn't get what they wanted out of the magistrate. They demanded the chief judge do something about it, and we're saying, and today, we need you to do it today. And he had to go and explain how he has a child with special needs who he was caring for, and how there was no urgency, and how they expected him to respond to their appeal without even sending him the appeal. They didn't send him a courtesy copy of what was being appealed, but were demanding his response. And so that led to these three appellate court judges denying it, saying there was no urgent matter. But the other thing the chief judge said in his letter was, there's no accusation of violence here. There's no.
All right, exactly. So you see what we're saying? There's no acts of violence. We read through the acts, and for them to try and detain Don Lemon and other reporters under these acts, while nothing that they've done even applies to any of these acts, it's really crazy work. And so, I just really want us to remember, because some of us, if we are, having our channels and we do our content, I do a lot of content on like political stuff and activist stuff, this is setting a new landscape for so-called, independent journalists or social media reporters, especially in 2026. So we are seeing a dangerous shift. Laws that are intended to protect civil rights and religious freedoms seem to be getting flipped and used as weapons against the very people reporting on the government overreach, because there is a big government overreach. Weaponization of the FACE Act against the press. Okay, we have to talk about that. Activists protest at a church led by an ICE official. Cities in the Church of St. Paul. The Department of Justice is now charging, this is for anybody who's just coming in, I'm just reiterating what's going on, now charging journalists who filmed the event with conspiracy to violate the FACE Act. And it doesn't apply, it doesn't add up. They are arguing that just simply being there to document a protest that obstructed supposedly a religious service, that the journalists were part of some type of conspiracy. This sets a terrifying precedent. If you film a protest that the government deems illegal, you can be charged as if you're the one protesting. But also remember, you have a right to protest. And so, this is why it's important to know these acts and know these laws, because the way they'll try to flip it and serve it back to you, you'll think that it's okay, but it's not. There's a serious gap between law and reality. The First Amendment and the Privacy Protection Act of 1980 protect you. No seizure. Law enforcement cannot legally confiscate your phone or camera or demand to see your footage without a warrant. You have the right to record. You have a constitutional right to film police and ICE in public spaces. But telling the truth now is a high risk activity. The qualified immunity that protects ICE agents often makes it nearly impossible to sue them personally when they attack a reporter. And we have been seeing all of this play out right in front of our own very eyes. We see ICE agents that are busting into churches, schools, workplaces, homes with no proper warrants to do so. And then when they get in there, they're getting rough. They're hemming people up, pushing them to the ground, slamming them around. And some, like we have seen, don't make it out of that. They're losing their lives. And so this is what's being reported on. This is what's being talked about by independent journalists and people who are brave enough to get out here on the front lines to bring the truth. Because if we let them tell it, they're going to lie to us every time. But anyway, y'all, we've reached the 56-minute mark. So let's go ahead and take a quick song break. And when we come back, I have just a few more videos that I want to show you guys. And we'll hear more from Don Lemon's crew as well. More of them will join the panel. And they have a lot of really important things to say. And their emotions and how they word what they got to say, definitely my sentiments. Exactly. So let's go ahead and get into this song. I'm going to meet y'all into the chat. And we'll be right back.
I thought we were sleeping, but the spirit is moving. One weekend only lost the Fox and the DHS. Yeah. She was playing checkers while we dealing with this mess. And it's pretty in the street, nursed with illegal heat, hosted in a holster, but they killed him for the feast. Stretching to the cities, call it metropolis war. You're knocking down the Constitution on the bedroom door. BOP is split, master screaming, what's the price? Juana Luma's on the stand, yeah, she's skating on the ice. Oh! Can I get a witness? They stripped the bill, they removed the clause. Crockett in the room, she's following the laws. Can I get a time? Yeah, he's feeling on the floor. They want the total search, we're coming with the feds. Trump firing the chiefs while the streets are seeing red. They want the total search, we're coming with the feds. Trump firing the chiefs while the streets are seeing red. Senior, yeah, he dropped the bomb. Said bringing home an in is a crisis never calm. Gestapo Greg Bofino, yeah, he's heading for the gate. Ellison is smiling while the judges pass the fate. Not credible, they said that he lied under the low. Trying to lock the Cabot City low. Don't sit in the gold, over resistance, persistence. To wait to the left, unlikely alleys fighting back against the state that's about to death. Rise up!
Reason for all of the overreach, and that, along with what you're saying, is they're devoting all of these funds, all of this full power of the federal government on these journalists and these people who were protesting, but for our purposes for today, on journalists like Don and Georgia, who were covering an event, and there's no one saying anything different. And in Don's case, he sat there and interviewed the pastor who was conducting the services that day. So to me, if you stand there and let me interview you, that's not me trespassing.
Well, Monique, from a legal standpoint, I think that dovetails exactly into my next point. Eventually, the rubber is going to meet the road here when you're talking about having to provide evidence that sustains these charges. At some point, you are going to have to put forth witnesses that corroborate facts and a timeline that isn't supported by the video that we have all seen repeatedly. You're going to have to sort of counter that. And that is where I say that for the DOJ, the punishment is the process, because the amount of evidence that they have, whether you're putting testimonial evidence up against video evidence and going to ask a jury in a court to sort of discern what makes most sense. Are you going to believe the testimony of someone who alleges that they were there and says, oh, something that you can't see on video, or are you going to trust your own actual eyes as you look at angle after angle after angle that is explained by attorneys and through testimony of other witnesses who were there and corroborated by the video that actually exists?
Yeah.
They know that they cannot sustain this. And that is why career prosecutors are like, I don't want my name associated with this. But again, for people who are saying, but why would they do this? They would do it for the intimidation factor. They would do it for the embarrassment factor. They would do it because oftentimes the retraction is always quieter than the headline. That is to say, today, Don Lemon being arrested is breaking news. It is a celebration in Magaland. It is red meat for that base. But
right.
At the point that the case is dismissed, at the point that the case moves on, that's not something that is as much of a conversation for them. So in their minds, from a narrative place, they maintain control. So for anyone who's wondering why would they go forward if they didn't have the charges, because it's not about the conviction, it's about the embarrassment.
Right. And Don isn't embarrassed, and neither is Georgia. And we stand with them. And it is going to backfire, not just when it's dismissed, but now, because they look ridiculous. They look like they don't care anything about the Constitution. They look like they don't respect journalists, which we know they don't. And to speak about these things, I am thankful we have joining us on the show, not for nearly the first time, but we have Aaron Haynes, who is president of the National Bar, not the National Bar Association, that's my association, National Association of Black Journalists. We have Reese Colbert, host of the Reese Colbert Show on Sirius XM Urban View. And we have, I think we have Clay Kane also. Do we have Clay? Hi there, Clay. Host of the Clay Kane Show. And you know what? You guys have all been on Don's show any number of times, and we look to you to provide us the information, the commentating, and the analysis that we need. I want to start with you, though, Aaron, because on behalf of Black journalists, and I know that journalists from a lot of different other associations stood with you when you all first made a statement over a week ago. But what do you have to say to us today?
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously, we are standing with and supporting Don and also Georgia Ford, the journalists who were arrested this morning. But this is not about one journalist or one protest. This is really about whether the First Amendment is still going to protect journalism, right? Especially journalism that is challenging power and centering marginalized communities. NABJ is obviously deeply concerned and even outraged, frankly, by the arrests of Don Lemon and Georgia Ford. They weren't obstructing justice. We know this. They were practicing journalism. And arresting journalists for news gathering is a direct threat to press freedom. And that is the message that I need for folks to hear today. These actions are not unprecedented. We know that Black journalists have long been surveilled, right? Arrested, targeted for exposing injustice. And so what we're seeing now is an alarming continuation of that pattern and an escalation that demands a response.
It does demand a response. Just a follow-up, Aaron, what does that look like to you? I know that NABJ will be issuing a statement, and you're speaking on behalf of the organization now, but what is the call to action, either for the public or for those of us who are in front of cameras and have the opportunity to speak?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I think first and foremost, we need transparency from authorities about the legal basis for these arrests, right? We need an end to prosecutorial actions targeting journalists for lawful news gathering. And we need an inquiry into whether these arrests violate press freedom statutes and constitutional guarantees. We also need for our larger press community to stand with us. They've been doing that. I expect that they will continue to do that. You've already seen statements in solidarity from other organizations this morning, from the civil rights community that has been standing up and speaking out. But again, this should alarm not just every single journalist in this country, but every member of the public. This is anti-democratic. We need you all to continue to monitor this situation, to speak out about this situation. This raises serious questions about abuse of power, disregard for First Amendment protections. And so that is what we need for people to keep in mind. Journalism that holds power to account is not a crime. And we continue to assert that the First Amendment is not optional.
Well,
All right, y'all. So just for a quick moment, I'm going to shift over because I have something else that I want to, talk to y'all about, read to you. And then I'm going to show you a video. We're going to have to take a blast back to the past because y'all know one of the things that I always say, but I think we all are starting to bear witness to be true, is that history does tend to continue to repeat itself. So I wanted to take y'all back to 1991. If y'all remember Rodney King, there are parallels here. So the parallels between the 1991 Rodney King assaulting and what we're witnessing now in 2026 with ICE and federal agents are both strikingly and deeply troubling. While technology has changed, the patterns of state violence and the battle over the truth remain almost identical. Now we have the George Holiday moment versus modern content creator. In 1991, it took a man named George Holiday with a bulky Sony Handycam to prove what Black Angelenos have been saying for decades, that the LAPD was using excessive and brutal force. That one grainy video from a balcony changed the world because it was the first time the broader public couldn't ignore the reality. Now in 2026, we have hundreds of George Holidays and recent unalivings like Renee Good and Alex Preddy in Minneapolis. Multiple angles from bystanders and independent journalists were posted to social media instantly. Just like in 1991, these videos are the only reason the official narrative is being questioned. Without the footage of the ICE officers pow-powing Renee Good's SUV, the agency claims that she ran them over. That might have been accepted as fact. We also have to get into the dehumanizing narrative, the thin blue line. During the Rodney King trial, the defense successfully argued that King was a dangerous monster who was in control of the situation despite being beaten on the ground. They used the thin blue line argument that the police are all that stand between civilization and chaos. Well, here's the parallel. We see the same language today with Operation Metro Surge. Federal officials are using the rhetoric of invasion and national security to justify mass agents pulling people from cars and using lethal force. And the danger of it all. Just as the jury in Simi Valley was told, don't believe your eyes back in 1992, today's journalists are being told that reporting on ICE is interfering with federal duties or conspiracies. We also have to get into the escalation of the new tools of brutality. After Rodney King's beating, the LAPD shifted away from batons because of the bad optics and moved towards pepper spray and tasers. In 2026, we're seeing a similar shift in tactics, but on a much more militarized scale. ICE isn't just using batons, they're using chemical agents, pepper balls, flashbangs, and pow pows, often directed specifically at the journalists or observers who were trying to record them. The brutality has leveled up. While King survived his beating, many of the encounters with federal agents today in 2026 are ending in immediate fatalities. This is leading to civil unrest, and we have to talk about the Insurrection Act. In 1992, LA uprising was a direct result of the system failing to provide justice despite clear video evidence. It was the last time the National Guard was used on such a massive scale until the current unrest in 2026 today. History shows that when the public sees the truth on video and the legal system, like the acquittal of the officers in 1992, ignores that truth, the result is an explosion of grief and anger. With the DOJ now using the FACE Act to arrest a journalist or multiple journalists, the government is trying to prevent another 1992 moment by stopping the footage from ever reaching the public in the first place. Do y'all see the transparency? I just want to point that out. And so now I want to show y'all a quick video as we take a blast from the past to support this narrative. So this is just a quick reminder and video I want to show y'all about Rodney King and the 1992 LA riots. We're going to get into a deep explanation in this video of exactly what happened, why, and how. And y'all let me know if we're not seeing any comparisons in today's time. Let me go ahead and get this up on the screen, y'all, and we'll get right into it. Trigger warning and fair use.
Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
In the early spring of 1992, the city of Los Angeles stood on the brink of an eruption, but few could predict just how violent and world-shaking the explosion would become. The streets hummed with the ordinary busyness of life, yet beneath the pavement flowed a current of rage, disappointment, and centuries-old wounds that had been reopened again and again by systems of injustice. The spark that set it ablaze was not new. It was not unfamiliar. It was yet another name, another face, another black man brutalized under the authority of those meant to protect. Rodney Glenn King, a 25-year-old construction worker, had already become a national symbol by the time the verdict came down, but no one could fully grasp the intensity of what would follow when 4 white police officers were acquitted for the brutal beating captured on video and broadcast across every American television screen. The story of the 1992 Los Angeles riots cannot be told without acknowledging the slow burn of history that preceded it. The roots of this fire stretch deep into the soil of systemic racism, economic disparity, and decades of strained relations between law enforcement and communities of color, especially Black and Latino neighborhoods in Los Angeles. In the years leading up to 1992, the LAPD had developed a national reputation, both feared and admired, for its tough-on-crime stance, militarized tactics, and unrelenting surveillance of inner-city neighborhoods. Under the leadership of Police Chief Daryl Gates, whose tenure began in 1978, the department embraced aggressive policing tactics, particularly the implementation of the Special Weapons and Tactics SWAT teams and widespread use of gang sweeps under Operation Hammer.
If you're over the age of 50, there is a new state-regulated burial.
These operations disproportionately targeted Black and Latino youth, resulting in thousands of arrests, many without charges, fostering a deeply entrenched mistrust between police and the community. Gates' controversial remarks about Black people being more susceptible to chokeholds only deepened the rift. Additionally, the economic conditions of the time were harsh. The Reagan-era policies of the 1980s had gutted public programs and accelerated the decline of industrial jobs, particularly affecting Black and brown working-class communities in cities like Los Angeles. The crack cocaine epidemic, along with the hypercriminalization that followed, created a combustible situation in neighborhoods like South Central, Compton, and Watts. On March 3, 1991, Rodney King was pursued by LAPD officers after a high-speed chase. Once stopped, he was brutally beaten by 4 officers, Stacy Kuhn, Lawrence Powell, Timothy Wind, and Theodore Briceño, while over a dozen others looked on. What made this event different was not just the violence, but that it was caught on tape by a bystander, George Holliday, from the balcony of his apartment. The footage, showing King being kicked, clubbed, and beaten with batons more than 50 times, circulated like wildfire. For many Black Americans, this was not a revelation, but a confirmation. The video didn't uncover a hidden truth. It illuminated a truth long lived and long ignored. When the trial was moved to the majority white suburb of Simi Valley, many feared that justice would again be denied. On April 29, 1992, their worst fears were realized. All 4 officers were acquitted of assault, and 3 were acquitted of using excessive force. The lone African-American juror had been dismissed before deliberations. When the verdict was read, disbelief turned quickly to fury. Almost instantly, protests began to grow in number and intensity throughout Los Angeles. What started as outrage over a miscarriage of justice evolved into something much larger, much more complicated. By late afternoon, the intersections of Florence and Normandy in South Central became the epicenter of the first wave of unrest. Motorists were dragged from their cars, including Reginald Denny, a white truck driver who was pulled from his truck and brutally beaten by a group of Black men in full view of television helicopters. The nation watched in real time as Los Angeles descended into chaos. The police were notably absent in those early hours. Overwhelmed and unprepared, they retreated and allowed much of the initial destruction to occur unchecked. Over the next 6 days, the city became a war zone. Fires lit up the night sky as buildings burned across South Central, Koreatown, and beyond. Over 1,000 buildings were destroyed. Entire blocks were looted, ransacked, and torched. Over 60 people were killed, and more than 2,000 were injured. Nearly 12,000 arrests were made. The National Guard, U.S. military troops, and federal agents were deployed in the largest domestic military operation since the 1960s civil rights era. The riots exposed not only the depth of racial tension in Los Angeles, but also the intersection of race, class, and power in America. Korean American shopkeepers were heavily impacted, as many of their stores were looted and burned. Many felt caught in the crossfire, both literal and symbolic, between Black residents who saw them as economic opportunists in their neighborhoods and a government that offered them little protection. The racial dynamics between Black and Korean communities became a focus of media narratives, often flattening the complexity of the situation. Beyond the destruction, the riots forced America to look in the mirror, if only briefly. The rebellion, because to many it was not a riot but a rebellion, was not simply about Rodney King. It was about cumulative pain, about voices that had gone unheard for too long. In the midst of the ashes, voices like that of King himself tried to reach across the flames. On May 1, 1992, King appeared publicly and asked the now famous question, "Can we all get along?" His words echoed like a desperate plea from someone who had unwittingly become the face of a movement, someone who knew he was both a symbol and a man. In the aftermath, there were commissions and reports. The Christopher Commission, formed by then-Mayor Tom Bradley, condemned the LAPD's practices and called for sweeping reforms. Chief Gates eventually stepped down. Community leaders called for reinvestment, for social programs, for healing. But for many, the systemic issues remained. The police continued to be a force of fear in Black neighborhoods. Economic inequality deepened, and mass incarceration continued to rise through the 1990s. The fire was never fully extinguished. It smoldered beneath the surface, waiting. The 1992 Los Angeles riots remain a pivotal moment in American history, a volatile intersection of racial injustice, economic despair, and systemic neglect. It was both a tragedy and a statement. To reduce it to violence alone is to ignore the deep history that led to that explosion. To understand it is to recognize that America's promise of justice and equality had been broken again and again, especially for those living at the margins. 30 years later, When George Floyd cried out for breath under the weight of a police officer's knee, a new generation erupted, not with surprise, but with fury. And so the story continued, carried by the names of Breonna Taylor, Tamir Rice, Eric Garner, and countless others. The history of the 1992 Los Angeles riots is not history at all. It is a living, breathing mirror, still reflecting the soul of a nation trying to reckon with its past and struggling to change its future.
All right, y'all. So I wanted to play that really quick, and so we can see, the comparison, because I know I often say it because I often see it, and I'm just like, historically, no, I wasn't old enough or even alive during some of these times, but I've always been into history, read and watched, certain timepieces and things of that nature to learn about history. And then we have our ancestors, our grandmothers, our great grandmothers, our grandfathers, our great grandfathers that tell us the stories and the experiences that they went through and things that have happened. And as we take a look at what is going on right now, it's seems to be repeating itself. It looks slightly different because we are living in very technological times, so things play out a little differently, but we're looking at the same principles. And just like y'all were saying in the comments, I absolutely agree. They are trying to drag us back, and it is the same old song and dance. And I believe that many of us are getting tired of seeing history repeat itself. But what can we do? But anyway, y'all, let's get into this next video. Okay, so as far as the talks around what is going on with Don Lemon and reporters, and the charges that they're trying to make under, the FACE Act and what the FACE Act is. I know I gave y'all a little bit of information about that we read through, but I also have a video here that I want to show you guys that breaks it down even more. Okay, so we can really fully understand what it is legally and lawfully, and then we can come to our own conclusion to whether these things are adding up or are they not, and who's on the side of what. A lot of times when I'm watching these and dusting up my history knowledge, and I'm seeing exactly what is happening, it seems as though the ones that are being accused of violating these acts and these laws are actually not the ones that are doing it. So when does the real justice, proper justice, come, and all of this be targeted towards the actual real enemy? You know what I'm saying? So let's go ahead and get into this. Listen to this real quick, y'all. It's not that long, it's just about 8 minutes. And then we'll be moving on because I also want y'all to hear a little bit about the James Byrd Jr. Hate Crime Prevention Act. I think that ties into a lot of what we're seeing happening as well. And so after we play both of these act videos, which are both, very short, then we will hear more from Don Lemon's channel and some of his friends and co-workers that are also speaking up about what is going on with his arrest. Okay, so we will get into that. Let's go ahead and talk about the FACE Act real quick and listen to this video, and I will meet y'all in the chat.
2024 marks the 30th year since the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act was enacted. This law is more commonly known as the FACE Act. It was signed by President Bill Clinton in 1994 in reaction to a wave of pro-life protests and sit-ins surrounding abortion facilities as people attempted to save the lives of the children whose mothers were walking inside. The Department of Justice says this law prevents, quote, violent conduct intended to injure, intimidate, or interfere with the right to seek, obtain, or provide reproductive health services. But many pro-life groups say the Biden administration unfairly uses the law to target those individuals seeking to rescue babies from death by abortion. In 2023, the Department of Justice indicted 8 pro-lifers under the FACE Act. In August, the department convicted Herb Garrity, William Goodman, Lauren Handy, John Hinshaw, and Heather Idoni. And in a separate case a month later, Joan Bell, Jonathan Darnell, and Jean Marshall were also found guilty. These advocates are currently being held in a detention facility in Northern Virginia while they await sentencing, and they could spend up to 11 years in a federal prison. We recently spoke to one of Lauren Handy's lawyers, Peter Breen, vice president and head of litigation at the Thomas More Society. He explained more about the FACE Act and why it's deeply concerning that so many pro-lifers have been indicted in recent years. Peter, thanks for sitting down with me today.
Glad to.
Peter, a lot of more than usual number of pro-life advocates have recently been charged under the FACE Act, and this is something that your firm has been very involved in. What is the FACE Act?
Well, and so the FACE Act is the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. It really has two parts. One is it is intended to stop what we would call the clinic rescues, where folks would go and they would peaceably sit in front of the door of an abortion clinic. You know, so it's a very peaceful thing. It draws its genesis from the American civil rights movements, which itself then goes back to Mahatma Gandhi in India. So the very, very peaceable nature of it. And so unfortunately, the pro-abortion side, with the enactment of the FACE Act, turned that into a federal crime. And so that's a great shame that we would do that at a federal level. There's no need for that. There are local laws that deal with it. On the other hand, the FACE Act is being used against pro-life advocates on the sidewalk, and it has been used in both the Obama administration and the Biden administration to try to shut down legitimate, appropriate sidewalk counseling. And so you saw that in the case of Mark Houck,
Yes.
the pro-life advocate in Philadelphia, who was charged 2 counts of FACE Act violations and then dragged out of his home by 20 FBI agents first thing in the morning. A horrible, horrible instance. And so really, when you look at the way they've used the FACE Act now, trying to say that legitimate, legal sidewalk counseling is somehow illegal or somehow obstructive or a violation, that's where we've been dealing with those issues with Mark Houck. And again, so that's where the FACE Act is right now.
Right.
Under the Obama administration, they had tried to say that when you are doing your sidewalk counseling ministry, that if you're talking to someone who happened to pull into an abortion facility in their car, well, you're obstructing the car behind them. And if it was any other issue beside abortion, the government wouldn't get near it. They would respect the fact the First Amendment protects your activities.
Right.
But again, we're having to fight that very great battle to try to defend our First Amendment rights against the FACE Act.
Yes, thank you for explaining that. And you mentioned Mark Houck. Thankfully, he was acquitted of those charges. Recently, a number of pro-life advocates in D.C. were indicted under the FACE Act. What was your reaction to that?
It's understandable. They did an old school rescue and live streamed it to Facebook. So in terms of violating the obstruction part of the FACE Act, I understand why that indictment was made. The problem there is a normal FACE Act indictment is a 6-month misdemeanor. It's like a trespass charge. And so if you undertake civil disobedience, the theory is you are laying your life on the line for the babies and to make a statement to the public. The problem is this. The Biden administration didn't just charge them with just a basic FACE Act. They charged them with a 10-year felony conspiracy against rights. They treated them worse than major drug dealers and also called it a crime of violence, such that if you had multiple FACE Act convictions, you would be treated like a 3 strikes you're out person. And so this is really the place where the Biden administration has gone beyond any prior administration. Not even Obama administration was doing this.
Wow.
To attack these folks. And when you look at it, Congress was very clear. FACE is not meant to be this major felony when you go and sit in a clinic. They had lower penalties when you do that. But instead, the Biden administration is just running roughshod over both the intent of Congress and common sense. These folks have not committed a massive, serious felony crime of violence as is being charged.
Interesting. And Congressman Chip Roy on Capitol Hill has introduced legislation that would repeal the FACE Act. Would you be in support of that?
Yes, and we've been in support of all of that. And of course, with the way Washington is split right now, it's tough to get any movement on a substantive piece of legislation. But what you hope is by calling attention to this situation, maybe we'll get the attention of some folks in the court system so that maybe higher up in maybe the courts of appeal or the Supreme Court, we can get some action to stop this overcharging where they're, again, calling these folks, violent felons, which is it's an outrageous slander against the pro-life movement and these brave advocates.
Right. Peter, before I let you go, we live in the United States of America. You know, our nation was founded on the right to life. And at every corner, it seems like there's litigation against that basic fundamental right. Did you ever think that we would be at this point in our nation's history? And can you offer us any hope and encouragement for the future?
Sure. Whenever you come into a pro-life conference, you've always got to deal with this. So you don't want folks to get complacent. And so you want to make sure to give them the unvarnished truth of what's happening. But at the same time, there are incredible causes for hope. So in the pro-life states, look at all the babies being saved. But in the pro-abortion states, say like in Illinois, where your abortion rate is skyrocketing, other states like, similarly situated. So we've got to have different strategies. But we're winning battles. We won a big injunction recently against an anti-pregnancy center law in Illinois. And that was the whole pro-life movement coming together. The activists came together, the legislators and the lawyers, and we were able to go into court and get great victories there. We are fighting back against the other side at every turn. And in part, the reason they're attacking us so hard is because it's working. Our advocacy is working. People are becoming more pro-life in their day-to-day lives and in their individual decisions. So that's the hope. I think the issue too, we are in a time of great change across the country, every issue. But in the abortion issue, we're still post-Dobbs, and folks are still trying to figure out, well, what do I do now? How does my state regulate it, what have you? But I'm seeing so many causes for hope in the states that are pro-life, and then even in those those states that are pro-choice on abortion, we are having sanctuary counties and cities for the unborn. We're doing all sorts of good things there and defending the First Amendment rights of sidewalk advocates so they can do their job and offer real alternatives to women in need.
Peter, thank you so much for sitting down with me and for sharing all your wisdom with us. Grateful for all the work that you do.
Hey, it's great to be with you.
All right, y'all. So I wanted to show y'all that video. And yes, I know that the conversation was wrapped more so around the first half or the first part of the FACE Act when it comes to, the abortions and the clinics. But I wanted you to listen to the talking points that he was making as far as pointing out the fact that protesters or individuals that were even standing outside of abortion clinics and, trying to convince or trying to pray or ask people not to, abort, were not dangerous criminals, right? Like they were not committing these dangerous crimes to be charged on a federal level. If anything, it is like he said, a misdemeanor. And so I wanted to make that comparison of how now there's more talk around the FACE Act when it comes to the second portion of it, when it comes to individuals that may be going to, I guess, churches and, religious places of worship and what exactly they're doing there. So if we have journalists that are just there reporting on a story or something that are mild-mannered, protesters that are there protesting at this specific church, when we're talking about like with the Don Lemon situation, because the pastor of that church is a high official of the ICE, right? And ICE is the individuals in the organization and group that is wreaking havoc in that city and town and state, right? And taking lives and abusing and hurting and harming people. And so they wanted to speak out against that. And even when you watch the video, there's even church members that are at the church praying and feel the same exact way that a lot of the protesters felt, because they're also in fear as well. They don't like seeing what's going on in their city and their town, but they're taking to their God and their church and their faith to, help ease their anxiety or pray for change and end of all of this. And so both groups honestly care about what is happening at the hands of ICE officers treating human beings and individuals the way that they are, based off of this mass deportation system that they have put in place under this administration. And a journalist was there to bear witness to not just what the protesters were speaking about and exposing, but also how the church members were feeling about what was going on in their city and their town at the hands of ICE agents. And so when we look at that, these journalists are not dangerous people. They're not committing any crimes. It's on any type of federal level. They were not busting through the doors. They weren't breaking windows. They weren't tearing the place up, hurting or harming anyone. The journalist is just there with the camera and the microphone reporting. The protesters were there with their voices speaking. That's not, under this FACE Act, someone who is wreaking havoc and harm under any of these facilities, but specifically we're talking about the religious facility, so the church, right? There was no havoc being wreaked like that. There was no harm or violence. But when we look at the correlation between that and what we see the ICE officers doing, there are ICE officers that are kicking in doors of churches, interrupting church services, snatching people off of the pews out the door and throwing them into vans and trucks and carrying them off because they're supposed to be illegal immigrants. They don't belong here. Their paperwork is not in order. Things of that nature. And then, if we take it further, and what we know a lot, and some of this really does contain, is there is a lot of racial profiling. So based off of what the people look like. For instance, I can give y'all another video that I can show you when it comes to exactly what I'm talking about, because I like to show y'all better than I tell y'all, because sometimes it's better for us to see it. And so when we're talking about these ICE agents that are busting in doors of church services, let's go ahead and pull this video up real quick. I have it here. Give me just a second. And so when we're going to talk about the FACE Act, then we need to be real about what's really happening and going on, right? And hold the proper people accountable who may actually be breaking the laws under that act. And so everything, now they try to flood the media with, Don and their protesters going into this church. But there's been many videos that we have seen of ICE agents busting into churches, specifically Hispanic churches. And so, they will try to flood the media with what they want you to see and what they want you to think is bad. But you look for yourself and see what is really and truthfully happening. And then you just use your own common sense to decide who is actually breaking the law in the acts when it comes to this, who is actually offending, So let's go ahead and see if I can get into this video for y'all real quick. Just really, really quickly, because I just want to show y'all exactly what we're talking about here. Okay, so give me just a second to get this up on the screen. All right. Oh, Powell says, okay, hold on, y'all. I'm about to check y'all comments. Hold on. Give me just 1 second, y'all. I'm going to get this up here. And then y'all know I'm going to meet y'all in the chat. Hold on. All right. So this is a video from about a month ago. This is from CBN News. Sacred ground or enforcement zone. ICE raids testing church community in Charlotte. So let's get into this. Okay. So we're going to talk about the FACE Act. We're talking about people's place of worship and how the FACE Act supposed to protect people from being able to barge in and disrupt people's church services and their religious beliefs. And, let's just watch the video.
Met with organized resistance. Authorities targeted places of faith, and the immigrant church community is still feeling the aftershocks. Brody Carter brings us that story.
Traditionally, churches have been considered places of refuge, sanctuaries for all who seek it. But that changed in January. And during a recent community event here at Casa de Dios, a community member, a church member, was detained, leaving many feeling as if they have no place to turn.
We heard the news about ICE, but we say this is a safety place. We're not doing nothing. We are not criminals.
Charlotte is home to a vibrant immigrant community, and in November, federal agents launched Operation Charlotte's Web to target possible criminals.
If we have known murderers and known drug dealers and some very bad people, we want to get them out.
The result, according to pastors and attorneys, became a shock and awe campaign, sparking protests and viral moments of outrage.
We want you the f out of here. I am a citizen. We are citizens. This is America.
They were scared. That's for sure. They were scared. They decide, a lot of people, they just decide to stay at home.
Faith leaders say ICE agents displayed aggressive tactics, frightening their congregations. Many immigrant churches stopped holding services for weeks, as some 30,000 children also reportedly stayed home from school.
We had ladies cooking inside the temple, and men working in the forest, and we had kids playing soccer, here.
On this Saturday afternoon at Casa de Dios, members gathered for a sermon before tackling a service project to clean up the woods and cut down trees.
I show everything because we are not hiding nobody.
Pastor Victor Ramirez says ICE agents moved in unexpectedly, causing some members to head into the woods while others hid inside for safety. Terrified children watched and others held on to them as ICE agents detained an El Salvadorian church member. They deported him 10 days later, leaving behind his wife and adult children.
I understand the ICE has to find criminals. I understand that and agree with that, but he's not a criminal.
This is a church.
It's a church.
While the arrest left a deep wound, it also raises the legal question of the ability to freely exercise religion.
We are all having to challenge that in federal court.
Attorney Anna Cushman, who represents a number of detainees, charges that in addition to spreading fear, these sweeps often operate outside the law, and she's part of a law firm intent on proving it.
I first think about the Constitution, protecting the free exercise of religion. That's kind of where I think you always have to start, because there's not an exception there that says you get to exercise your religion so long as you don't get in the way of immigration enforcement. There is no exception there.
For this Christian attorney, Faith calls her to welcome everyone, including immigrants and refugees, a principle she believes is under attack.
We are not welcoming the stranger. We are not treating the least of these as if they are Jesus, and that we are called to this kind of radical hospitality to those in our midst, because we too were strangers.
That call is tested daily at Casa Viva Church on Charlotte's East Side. Associate Pastor Alejandro Titan leads 1,000 congregants, mostly Latino immigrants. While he acknowledges many are undocumented, his duty is to love them all while also upholding the law.
Yeah, I can lie. There's a people with no paper, of course. We know, and our teaching right now in this situation is we are the church, we are the body of Christ, we are Christian, and we need to obey the law. We are not against the law, but we think there's a different ways to do the law.
ICE agents reportedly caught upwards of 370 people, and as their Charlotte's Web operation took root, a coordinated citizens network sprang up. Nonprofits, local churches, and neighbors came together protesting, blowing whistles to warn about approaching agents while handing out Know Your Rights flyers. Some also volunteered to deliver food to families afraid to leave home.
We don't need immigration and custom enforce coming into Charlotte, disrupting our city, creating fear in our city and workplace.
This is not about public safety. It is not about finding criminals. It is about fear, it is about quotas, and it's about control.
The rally cry was organized under the message that loving your neighbor isn't just the right thing to do, it's holy.
Border Patrol being here is really going to affect how we live on a day-to-day basis, if we're going to be living in fear, constant fear that one day one of us might not come home.
ICE declined CBN's request for an interview and gave a statement that its actions in Charlotte were lawful and targeted threats to public safety. Facing that future, faith leaders are left with a final, simple plea to the president.
We pray for him. All we ask is for some mercy, because the people that attended our church, they're not criminals. We're not criminals. We serve a purpose, the purpose of the Lord.
Reporting in Charlotte, North Carolina, Brody Carter, CBN News.
All right, y'all. So y'all see what I'm saying? So we just played that video. Y'all seen? Then that's just not the only church. There's multiple churches that ICE has been targeting, busting down the doors. Like I said, hemming people up, dragging them out mid-church service. You see the little children there. They're scared. They're fearful. They want to go to church. They want to worship, but they're afraid if they're going to church, these ICE agents going to come in and wreak all types of havoc over them and, drag them up out of there. And so when we're talking about the FACE Act and everything that we learned about that today and how it's supposed to protect people from going through those type of experiences, if the ICE agents are the ones that are doing it, what happens there? What happens now? Why are they not being held accountable or being charged under the FACE Act? But yet we have a journalist that is not disrupting the church, not hurting or harming the people, just coming in to film and report on what is happening at that location. But that person gets arrested and thrown into jail while all of these ICE agents and officers continue to roam free, to continue to wreak havoc over places and spaces and people. This is what I'm saying. It is upside down. It's not, if you want to hold someone accountable under this act, we see clearly who should be held accountable under this act. Y'all let me know what y'all think. I don't know, but to me, that's what I'm seeing. Okay. And so let's go ahead and take a quick song break. After this song break, then we're going to get into the next act that I want to show y'all about. And this is the James Borough Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act. And we'll talk about exactly how that ties into a lot of what we're seeing at the hands of ICE as well. But not even just ICE, because it has been going on previously and for a long period of time at the hands of local police, state police, federal police. This is happening all over at the hands of these groups and organizations. And so we have to ask ourselves if they want to get legal with it, if you want to take it to the acts and the laws, then we can take it to the acts and the laws. But let's make sure we're applying them properly to the proper people they deserve to be applied to. And Joanne says ICE is an informal modernization of the KKK. I really agree with that. And, we've had Jasmine Crockett speak out and say that. Other people have also mentioned that as well. When you look at it, yeah, that's very much what it's giving and what it looks like. And we know that like I said, our ancestors and stuff, if they're still here with us and they can, still be able to tell us the tales, they will tell you. They have lived it. They have experienced it. They have survived it. And they've seen what they experienced back then when there was the KKK coming for people the way they did. And they compare it to what they're seeing now with these ICE agents roaming the streets like they do. It's very similar. It's almost the same, And so this is just all what we point out and we talk about, because it's like, when does it end? It has to end. And the fact that this is still happening, absolutely, Imani. It's same. Yeah. Slave catchers, what do they call them? The overseers and stuff like that. Absolutely. A lot of this looks the same. And there is people who have bear witness with it with their own eyes. Like I said, our grandparents, great grandparents. And if they're still here with us and can tell a story, yeah, they tell these stories to us. Or they have told these stories to us before they may be no longer with us. We watch the timepieces. We watch the history pieces. We see it. We're seeing the comparison of the two. Same man, different suit. Yeah. Absolutely. So, y'all, this is where we're at with it. But we're not going to let it get us down. We're not going to be defeated by this, because we will get through it. We're going to be okay. The light is always on the other side of the tunnel. Just like when our ancestors was going through this, same thing. Some of them probably didn't make it. Some of us aren't making it. But a lot of people did survive it and get through it and see that brighter day on the other side. And we will get through this too. But we do have the rights to be able to speak up and use our voices to talk about these things and bring the impertinent details and conversations to the forefront. And if we need to get it on camera, if we need to get it on recording, if we need to have conversations about it live on panel, we have the right to do that. And nobody should ever be abused, unalived, or thrown into jail for doing so, because you want to hide the nasty work that you're out here doing. You don't want it to get out. You don't want nobody to see it. You do it in broad daylight, so I don't even really get that. Or you just don't want video evidence. You don't want good reporters pointing out exactly what it is that you're doing and telling the truth about it, instead of you feeding a house of lies through the media to the people. The nasty work of it all. Let's take this quick song break, y'all, and we'll get right back. We'll get into the James Byrd Act.
The vision, the mission of the television, spitting division, a mental prison, got the youth chasing likes, addicted to the feed, ignoring the hunger, the fundamental need. They building paper idols on a digital stage, putting our future daughters in a virtual cage. Now we gotta break the cycle, gotta cut the cord. The real word is powerful, mighty, even the sword. So we teach them about their history, teach them about their grace, teach them about the power, every single face.
We are human, blood and bone and soul, with the right to be late, the right to be whole.
This is our story, this is our sacred song, in the eyes of the Creator. Justice, a word of peace, a promise that the fight will never cease. This ain't just a track, it's a call to action for every mother, father, every single fraction of the community, holding it down on the ground, time to get loud, make a revolutionary sound. Look your child in the eye, tell them that they matter, tell them their spirit's something to know like a shadow, tell them knowledge is the weapon, love is the shield, and the truth is the harvest. We're gonna grow in this field. Yeah. Oh, yes we are.
We got you, baby.
All right, y'all. So let's go ahead and get into this next video here. And again, like I said, this is the one that we'll be watching about the James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act. Okay, so we're gonna get into some of that, and I want y'all to pay attention to what they're saying, what they're telling us about this act, and we also pay attention to what we're seeing playing out right now, how people are being treated. And so I want to know what y'all think, whether you think this applies or not. I've already watched it through one time, and this is why I put it back up. A lot of stuff under this act really applies. So if we're going to get into the law, we're going to, do what we got to do, then I think sometimes we need to look into these acts and see what our laws and our rights are as people. We don't always know that. But they're there. They're in place. And we see, we have an administration that's digging them up and trying to wield and weaponize them against people for their own reasons. When our actual rights are actually being offended and taken from us, we have laws in place for protections as well that we can use in defense of how we're being treated as people. So let's go ahead and get into this, y'all. And I'll meet y'all in the chat per usual.
What is the James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act? Have you ever wondered how laws can protect individuals from hate crimes? The James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act is a significant piece of legislation that aims to do just that. This law was enacted in 2009 and is part of the broader Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act. It was created to expand federal hate crime protections to include more categories of victims. Originally, federal hate crime laws focused on race, color, religion, and national origin. However, this act added protections for gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, and disability. This was a major step forward, as it was the first federal law to criminalize hate crimes motivated by sexual orientation or gender identity. The act is named after James Byrd Jr., an African-American man who was brutally murdered in a hate crime in 1998. His tragic story, along with that of Matthew Shepard, a gay man who was also murdered that same year, highlighted the urgent need for stronger protections against hate crimes. When President Barack Obama signed this law, it was included in the National Defense Authorization Act for 2010. One of the key features of the act is that it allows federal authorities to prosecute hate crimes even if the victim was not engaged in a federally protected activity, like voting or attending school. This means that federal intervention can happen even when local authorities might not take action. Additionally, the law provides federal funding to assist state, local, and tribal law enforcement agencies in investigating and prosecuting hate crimes. From 2010 to 2012, $5 million was allocated annually for this purpose. Another important aspect of the act is its requirement for the Federal Bureau of Investigation to collect and report statistics on hate crimes based on gender and gender identity. This helps to create a clearer picture of hate crimes in the United States. The law makes it a federal crime to intentionally cause bodily injury or attempt to do so with a dangerous weapon when the act is motivated by bias against the victim's protected characteristics. This applies to crimes that affect interstate or foreign commerce or occur in federal jurisdictions. From a political standpoint, the James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act represents a commitment to addressing hate crimes in a comprehensive manner. It acknowledges that these crimes not only harm individuals but also intimidate entire communities. By expanding equal protection principles, the act aims to provide a safer environment for historically marginalized groups. In summary, this law complements other legislation like the Matthew Shepard Act, reinforcing protections for vulnerable populations and enhancing the federal government's role in combating hate crimes across the nation. It is a significant step toward ensuring that all individuals are protected under the law, regardless of their identity.
I'm begging you, stop.
All right, y'all. So as y'all can see, that was a little short one right there, but it gave us a little bit more information into exactly what that act has been set up for and what it's about. And so if we ask ourselves why, if these protections are in place for people, then we need to be able to utilize them. We need to be able to learn about them, know that they're in place for us, and be able to utilize them. So when we're talking about these hate crimes, we've seen many hate crimes over the past few years, right? We've seen people gunned down in the street, powed down in the street, choked to death, powed in their homes, dragged out of their cars, their workplaces, and we know, at the core, a lot of this is due to hate. It is due to hate. It is due to racism. We know that. We see that. This is not just business as usual. There's a deeper feeling of disdain there. And so we do have acts and laws in place for that. So I just want to go ahead and play that real quick, y'all. But we have reached the 2-hour mark now. So I'm going to go ahead now and play this last video, and we're going to get up out of here. We will keep up with the updates on what is going on with Don Lemon. We are praying for his freedom, because honestly, in my opinion, I don't think he deserves to be apprehended. I don't believe he did anything wrong. He doesn't deserve to be charged and sitting in a jail somewhere. And so we need to pay attention to these things and stand by one another, especially when we know we have journalists like this that are really doing the good work. They're fighting the good fight. They're bringing us the truth. They're letting us know exactly what is going on out here in this country, in these cities, with this government and administration we have in place, and some worldwide as well. So this is the final video, y'all. I wanted to show y'all just a little final piece of hold on, excuse me, y'all. There's something in my throat. Just a final piece of the FACE Act. Okay, we want to finish up with that because I really want to bring it home. When it comes to this FACE Act, let's look into it deeper, read about it deeper, and really pay attention to who is offending it and who is not. So let's play this, y'all, and of course we'll end with a bop, and then I will talk to y'all on the next live. Let's get into
Well, on Capitol Hill, there is a move among some congressional Republicans to take a closer look at how a 30-year-old law designed to protect both abortion clinics and pro-life facilities from harassment is being enforced. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us now from the studio with the latest. Eric.
Well, good evening, Tracy. Yes, let me start first with some background, folks. In 1994, President Bill Clinton signed into law the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, known as the FACE Act. Now, since Roe was overturned, Republicans have accused the Biden administration of weaponizing it against pro-lifers while failing to charge those who attack pregnancy care centers and even Catholic churches. Weeks ago, while testifying up on the Hill, FBI Director Christopher Wray said that's not the case.
Since the Dobbs decision, actually more of our abortion-related violent extremism investigations have focused on violence against pro-life facilities as opposed to the other way around.
Now, Congressman Chip Roy wrote the FBI director demanding an explanation after the Department of Justice shows different data. He wrote, quote, "The fact that the department's own data shows that a mere 8% of FACE Act cases filed by the Biden-Harris administration are against agitators at pregnancy resource centers would seem to believe your assertion that a majority of abortion-related violent extremism investigations have focused on violence against pro-life facilities following the Dobbs decision." Congressman Roy and other Republicans also point to the head of the DOJ's Civil Rights Division responsible for enforcing the FACE Act. Kristen Clark admitted hiding an arrest and subsequent expungement from investigators during her confirmation hearing in April 2021.
There's but one way to fix it, I think. That is, the funding that goes to those departments has to be cut in an extremely material way. You've got to see reorganization of that entire branch of government.
Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon, a Democrat, says the GOP is peddling false information.
The FACE Act scope does include anti-abortion facilities, but let's be clear, the overwhelming majority of such violence, threats, and intimidation has been and continues to be directed against abortion providers and patients by anti-abortion extremists.
Congressman Roy and Senator Mike Lee have called for the repeal of the FACE Act, arguing that it serves no purpose but to target pro-life activists. And Catholic organizations such as Priests for Life agree, saying that the FACE Act is a bad law and needs to go. They're hoping for congressional action when the new Congress comes back in January.
Okay, y'all. So that was just some, a little bit of final piece of footage that I wanted to show y'all about the FACE Act. As we can see, throughout the years, it has been mostly focused on the abortion clinics, abortions, and Roe versus Wade being, redacted, all of that type of stuff. Now we're seeing it being more so, used or brought up or weaponized when it comes to what they call these invasions into churches and religious spaces. But we have to be very honest and clear who's invading these religious spaces and churches the most. It's the ICE agents. So we just got to be real about what we see, y'all. And if it's right in front of our face and we're hearing it with our own ears and seeing it with our own two eyes, it is what it is, okay? If it looks like a duck and it sounds like a duck, and it quacks like a duck, and it's a duck. Anyway, y'all, that's all I got on this live. We're going to end it with a bop per usual, and I will talk to y'all in the next one. Also, stay tuned because Mama Warrior will be going live later on this evening to bring some prayer, and all of that beauty and hope that she brings to her lives and her videos into this mix. And we'll also be talking about the situations that we are seeing at the hands of ICE and with Don Lemon. But hashtag free Don Lemon, hashtag free anybody who does not deserve to be detained. And yeah, all of this has to end and stop. We are praying, we got boots on the ground, and we got voices loud. And so we will continue to do that until we see the proper change that we need to see. All right, y'all. I will talk to y'all in the next live. Golden signing out. Bye.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let it ring out loud. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea, like the mighty waters. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. We remember it all. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Hope is alive, yeah. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on. Let's keep marching till victory is won. Stony the road we trod. Bitter the casting right. But we're still here. Steady
been to the right place. Welcome to the rain. Golden Queen, H2.0. Let's get it. You're looking for a diamond, found a treasure in the rough. Tired of all the noise, cause you finally had enough. I'm here to build a movement on a mission for the nation. Dropping gems of knowledge, killing all the hesitation. We fighting for the truth, yeah, we fighting for what's right. Building unity and shining up a brand new light. It's a variety channel, but the vision's crystal clear. Pushing us all forward, conquering the doubt and fear. Yo, welcome to the Queendom, H2.0 on your screen. Where the content's real and smart and funny in between. This is more than just a stream, it's a platform for the change. Time to elevate the game and rearrange. So if you're ready for a vibe that you can feel and trust, joining in the movement is a definite must. This ain't just another channel talking smack behind the screen. It's a spotlight for the creators, building up of the scene. Spreading radical love, that's the message in the code. Helping everybody carry up a heavy load. From social justice issues to the laughter that we need. Planting seeds of progress, watch them grow from just a seed. This is authentic, this is raw, this is everything you saw. Welcome to the battle that is truly being fought. Oh, so come with your respect and see the real effect. Cause I protect my own right here on the throne. Don't make me unleash the dragon. You've been warned. Yeah. Don't make me unleash the dragon. You've been warned. Yeah. Don't make me unleash the dragon, you've been warned. Yeah. Yeah. Golden Queen H2.0. The movement starts now. Go ahead. Hit subscribe, ring that notification bell. You don't want to miss a thing. Welcome to the family.